Welcome to the tutorial on how to create a navigation bar using Adobe Fireworks. As you can see from my example, I've included a navigation bar with 5 option buttons. If I hover over the buttons, they move slightly to indicate that they are actually a button. And when I hover over the cast button, a drop down menu appears with 4 options, and when I hover over those, they change colour again to indicate that they are a button. The colour scheme is the same as on the original buttons. So how do we go about producing something of this style in Fireworks? Let's move over into Fireworks into our document that we set up in the last part of the tutorial. The tool that we're going to be using to create our buttons is the rounded rectangle tool, and that can be found over here under the vector options. You have a load of different vector shapes that you can choose from, but today we're going to look at rounded rectangle. So if we draw onto our page a rounded rectangle, you can see the sort of shape that we're looking to have. So I'm going to get rid of that one, and I'm going to change the colour of my rounded rectangle so it's more appropriate for my house style. What I want to do is choose a gradient, because gradients tend to give a little bit more depth to the image itself. So I'm going to choose a linear gradient, and in the same way that I chose the colours for my background, I'm going to choose the colours for my gradient. I'm going to actually use the Big Buck Bunny logo as my source colours. So I'm going to choose one of the top colours for the left hand side of my gradient, and one of the bottom darker ones for the right hand side of my gradient. And now when I draw my buttons on, you'll see they're very similar in style to the logo itself. They've also got a stroke on it, that's a border, and at the moment it's set to 2 pixels, and I want to reduce that down to 1. So we're almost now at the stage where I'm happy with that button. What I need to then do is add some text onto the button itself, and I'm going to do that by clicking on the text tool and drawing inside the button. Making sure that I've chosen an appropriate font, in this case I've chosen Myriad, I'm going to add the text to my button. I'm going to make sure it's centered. And now, with a little bit of adjustment on the text placement so it's more central, I've created the first button there. What we now need to do is actually replicate this for all of the other buttons, and instead of actually going through the process of making the rounded rectangle, adding the text, one easy way of doing it is to actually copy and paste what we've already produced. So making sure then that I've selected the rectangle and the text, and to do that I hold down the shift key and then click copy. I can then paste in the button again, and it will have pasted just over the top of it, and I can just move it to its new position. I'll do the same thing again, and using the pink lines to line up. I've now got the start of a navigation bar. I'm going to do one more button on there. Obviously I now need to change the text on my navigation bar, so I'm going to look at my original option and see what text I was including on that one. So I had cast, about, images and watch. So I'm going to change those exactly the same on this one. So cast, luckily all my text fits. Occasionally yours may not fit, so you might need to readjust the size of your rectangle. If you do need to do that, it's very simple. You can just select the rectangle and then you can just drag it so it's slightly wider. But I don't need to do that for any of my graphics. So I have the first part of my navigation bar. In the next lesson we're going to show you how to animate the navigation bar and add drop down menus.